2 Kings Chapter 1. And Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. And Ahaziah fell through the lattice in his upper chamber which was in Samaria and became ill. And he sent messengers and said to them, Go and inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron whether I will recover from this sickness. But the angel of Jehovah said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you go to inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron? Now therefore thus says Jehovah, You shall not come down from the bed on which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. And Elijah departed. And when the messengers returned to him, he said to them, Why have you returned? And they said to him, A man came up to meet us and said to us, Go and return to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus says Jehovah, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you send men to inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from the bed on which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. And he said to them, What sort of man was he who came up to meet you and spoke these words to you? And they said to him, A hairy man, and he was girded with a leather girdle around his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. And he sent a captain of 50 with his 50 to him. And the captain went up to him, and there he was, sitting on the top of the hill. And he said to him, O man of God, the king says, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And again the king sent another captain of 50 with his 50. And the captain answered and said to him, O man of God, thus says the king, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said to them, If I am the man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And again the king sent a captain of a third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of 50 went up, and he came and fell on his knees before Elijah, and he entreated him and said to him, O man of God, may my soul and the soul of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Already fire has come down from heaven and consumed the first 2 captains of 50 and their 50s, and now may my soul be precious in your sight. And the angel of Jehovah said to Elijah, Go down with him, do not be afraid of him. And he rose up and went down with him to the king. Then he said to him, Thus says Jehovah, Because you sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron, was it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word, therefore you shall not come down from the bed on which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. And he died according to the word of Jehovah which Elijah had spoken. And Jehoram began to reign in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, because he had no son. And the rest of the acts of Ahaziah which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? 2 Kings Chapter 2. And when Jehovah was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind into heaven, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, Stay here, for Jehovah has sent me as far as Bethel. And Elisha said, As Jehovah lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, Do you know that Jehovah will take away your master from over your head today? And he said, I too know it, be silent. And Elijah said to him, Elisha, stay here, for Jehovah has sent me to Jericho. And he said, As Jehovah lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And they came to Jericho. And the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, Do you know that Jehovah will take away your master from over your head today? And he said, I too know it, be silent. And Elijah said to him, Stay here, for Jehovah has sent me to the Jordan. And he said, As Jehovah lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So the two of them went on. And 50 men from the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and struck the water, and it parted to this side and that, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. And when they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, Ask what I should do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, Let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. And he said, You have asked a hard thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, so will it be to you, but if not, it will not be so. And as they went on and talked, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared, and they separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it and cried, My father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. And he did not see him any more. And he grasped his clothes and tore them in two pieces. And he picked up Elijah's mantle, which had fallen from him, and returned and stood by the bank of the Jordan. And he took Elijah's mantle, which had fallen from him, and struck the water and said, Where is Jehovah, the God of Elijah? And when he also struck the water, it parted to this side and that, and Elisha crossed over. And when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposite him saw him, they said, The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. And they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. And they said to him, Here with your servants are 50 strong men, let them go and seek your master, lest the spirit of Jehovah has taken him up and cast him upon some mountain or into some valley. And he said, You shall not send them. But when they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, Send them. So they sent 50 men, who searched for 3 days but did not find him. And they returned to him while he stayed at Jericho, and he said to them, Did I not say to you, Do not go? And the men of the city said to Elisha, The location of the city is good, as my lord can see, but the water is bad, and the land is barren. And he said, Bring me a new jar, and put salt in it. And they brought it to him. And he went out to the source of the water and threw salt there, and he said, Thus says Jehovah, I have healed this water, there will not be any more death or barrenness from there. So the water has been healed to this day, according to the word of Elisha, which he spoke. And he went up from there to Bethel. And as he was going up on the way, some little boys came out from the city and mocked him and said to him, Go up, bald head, go up, bald head. And he turned around and looked at them and cursed them in the name of Jehovah. Then 2 female bears came out of the woods and tore up 42 children among them. And he went from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings Chapter 3. Now Jehoram the son of Ahab began to reign over Israel in Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of Jehovah, but not as his father and his mother had done, for he put away the pillar of Baal, which his father had made. Yet he clung to the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, by which he caused Israel to sin, he did not turn away from them. Now Mesha the king of Moab was a sheep breeder, who would pay as tribute to the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. And when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went forth from Samaria on that day and mustered all Israel. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to Moab to fight? And he said, I will go up, I will be as you are, my people will be as your people, my horses, as your horses. And he said, By which way shall we go up? And he said, By the way of the wilderness of Edom. So the king of Israel and the king of Judah and the king of Edom set out, and they circled about on a journey of 7 days. And there was no water for the army or for the animals that followed them. And the king of Israel said, Alas! Jehovah has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there no prophet of Jehovah here, by whom we may inquire of Jehovah? And one of the servants of the king of Israel answered and said, Elisha the son of Shaphat is here, who used to pour water on the hands of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of Jehovah is with him. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said to the king of Israel, What do I have in this that concerns you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. And the king of Israel said to him, No, for Jehovah has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. And Elisha said, As Jehovah of hosts, before whom I stand, lives, were it not that I regard Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, I would not even look at you or see you. But now bring me a musician. And as the musician played, the hand of Jehovah came upon him. And he said, Thus says Jehovah, Make this valley trenches, all trenches. For thus says Jehovah, You will not see wind, nor will you see rain, but that valley will be filled with water, and you will drink, as will your cattle and your animals. And this is but a small thing in the sight of Jehovah, for he will deliver Moab into your hand. And you will strike every fortified city and every choice city, and every good tree you will fell, and all the springs of water you will stop, and every fine portion of land you will mar with stones. And in the morning, at about the time of the offering up of the meal offering, there came water from the direction of Edom, and the land was filled with water. Now when all Moab heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, any of those old enough to strap on armor and upward were called out, and they stationed themselves at the border. And when they rose up early in the morning, the sun shone on the water, and the Moabites saw the water before them as red as blood. And they said, This is blood, the kings have no doubt fought against themselves, and each has struck down his companion. Now therefore to the spoil, O Moab. And when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and struck the Moabites, so that they fled before them. And they went among them and struck down the Moabites. And they overturned the cities, and on every fine portion of land each man threw his stone and filled it up, and every spring of water they stopped, and every good tree they felled. Only at Kar-Hareseth did they leave stones standing, but the slingers encircled it and struck it. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle went hard against him, he took with him 700 men who drew the sword, in order to break through to the king of Edom, but they were not able to do it. So he took his firstborn son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him up as a burnt offering upon the wall. And great wrath came upon Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their land.